Hi and welcome, my name is Lawrence Baker and this video is going to be about luminosity masking in Photoshop. I want to point out that luminosity mask or masking are just masks that exist in the channels panel. They're alpha masks and they're based on a range of luminosity in an image. Whereas exposure blending is a technique. You can use luminosity masks for exposure blending, but the masks are the masks and the blending techniques are just techniques. So normally luminosity masks are used for exposure blending, but let's clear that up straight away. We're in Lightroom. As of October 2018, they brought about range masks for the graduated filter, the radial filter and the adjustment brush. This is a luminance mask and it's restricted to 73, which is 73% grey effectively, up to 100% white. So this graduated filter is only affecting the brighter pixels. Hence, it's not touching those trees. That is a luminance mask. If I take that luminance mask off, press M to lose those graduated filter overlays, that's a HDR image. Take a good look at it. I don't like it. I did it first, year later, don't like it. So G on my keyboard, I created it out of 3 images here, shot with exposure bracketing. So 3 shots at 2 EV apart. I was in aperture priority and had the ISO tied down to 100. So each shot will move the shutter speed and nothing else. So 0 EV, 1/15 of a second, plus 2 or 2 EV, I don't know why it's not plus, 1/4 of a second, and the -2 one, 1/60th of a second. In hindsight, probably too much dynamic range. Because the reason you do things like this is so you can merge to HDR, etc. But you should really judge your scene. It's very quick and dirty to do exposure bracketing 3 shots at 2 EV apart. But in hindsight, I think I probably should have gone for 1 EV apart. But it is what it is. So G. Now, if I want to bring these images into Photoshop, I need to make sure that lens corrections are being done on all 3 images. And that's the only thing I'm going to do. Now, if they were TIFFs, or let's say JPEGs, shift click, select all 3, go photo, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. 1 document with 3 separate layers with those files in. But I want them as smart objects so I can develop them or play around with them with Adobe Camera Raw inside of Photoshop. Photo, edit in, open as smart object in Photoshop. Unfortunately, if I selected 3 images, I get 3 separate documents and then I have to drag 2 layers into one. So I've got all 3 layers in 1 document. Now I've done this process to the point where I've got the 3 separate documents in Photoshop. So here's the 3 documents. I need to move the layers from 2 and 3 into number 1. So 3rd document here, layers, move tool, V on your keyboard, drag the layer up to document tab 1, see the image, drag down, press the shift key because all these images are the same size. Pressing the shift key will ensure that it's moved in place. Let go of the mouse, then the shift key. Number 2, move the canvas if you want to, drag it up to tab 1, drag down, press the shift key, let go of the mouse. We have 3 smart objects in 1 document. Get rid of the other 2. Command Control W, don't save. Command Control W, don't save. Right. Let's straighten up the horizon. Shift click on the 3rd one, crop tool, straighten, click down, drag, and straighten up the horizon. In fact, I might do it again because it's a little bit skew again. So that looks pretty good. Press the tick symbol or press return. Very processor intensive. These are 3 large raw files. So I've got my 3 images. I need to name them up. That's the 2 EV one, the bright one. I'm going to call that bright. That's the dark one. That's 2 EV and that is dark. And this one, the 0 EV one, I'm actually going to call normal. Normal on the bottom, -2 in the middle, and 2EV at the top. Now, I might not use the 2EV one because the masks might work against each other. A lot of people only use 2 images or 2 layers. I'm actually going to risk using 3 and see how I get on. So I've done no developing on these images at all, except for lens corrections. I will point that out. Now, this bit is vitally important. When you come to create the mask, whether you do it with the Photoshop action or whatever, make sure you've picked the balanced exposure. Because if you don't, you will have a luminosity mask based on all 3 layers. So visibility has meaning in Photoshop. 2EV is selected and visible, but if I take that off, it's selected but not visible. It's visibility that matters. So if you turn that one off, make sure only the 0EV or the balanced exposure, whichever one that is the visible one. Channels. Command and Control key kept pressed. Click on RGB. Notice the marching ant symbol has appeared underneath the hand. Click down. This will select any pixels that are brighter than 50% grey. This becomes our first lights channel. So Alt Option key kept pressed so we can name it. Click down on Save Selection as Channel. This will be Lights 1. Now, normally you'd have 18 luminosity masks, 6 lights, 6 darks, 6 midtones, but I'm going to create 2 of each manually. So Lights 1, keep the selection, Shift, Alt Option, Command and Control key kept pressed. It turns to a multiplication symbol. It's normally the intersect keyboard shortcut, but here we're doing multiplication. I can't explain the maths, we don't have time, but click down on Lights 1 and we shrunk the mask down. Every time we do this, it will select the brighter and brighter pixels. So we need to save this. Alt Option key kept pressed. Save selection as channel. This becomes Lights 2. So that's the lights dealt with. We're going to deal with the darks. Command or Control key kept pressed. Click on RGB again to select any pixels that are brighter than 50% grey. Select Inverse. Shift, Command and Control I. We are now selecting any pixels that are darker than 50% grey. This now becomes our first darks channel. Alt Option key kept pressed, save selection as channel, and this will become darks 1. Same process, Shift, Alt Option, Command and Control key kept pressed, multiplication, click down on darks. You're shrinking the selection down to darker and darker areas as you do this. Alt Option key kept pressed, click on new channel or save selection as new channel, and this will be darks 2. For the midtones, Command or Control A or select all. We are now going to subtract Lights 1 and Darks 1. Keyboard shortcut, Alt or Option, Command or Control key kept pressed. Click on Lights 1 and click on Darks 1. Ignore that. Alt Option key kept pressed. Click on that. This becomes Midtones 1. Command and Control A, select all. Alt Option, Command and Control key kept pressed. Click on Darks, or actually click on Lights 2. Well, either way around doesn't make any difference. Lights 2, Darks 2. Alt Option key kept pressed. Click. This becomes Midtones 2. Let's have a look at them. Command and Control D to deselect, or select and deselect. Let's have a look at them. Lights 1, perfect grayscale version of your image. Lights 2, it's getting sort of darker because it's getting to the brighter and brighter pixels. Darks 1, total reverse. So you can see if you want to work on those trees, you'd load up this one to work on those trees to brighten them up. Darks 2, it's getting darker or selecting the darker and darker pixels. Midtones, pretty obvious, 1 and 2. I'm now going to delete them, shift click on each one and then trash them. And then I'm going to run an action. Now, search on the internet, Luminosity Mask, Photoshop action, do not pay for one, and then go to the Actions panel, click on it, go to Load Actions, and find that action you've downloaded. I'm going to create all luminosity masks. That will create 18 masks, 6 lights, 6 darks, 6 midtones. This video is an overview, really. The difficult part of all this really is the editing. But you need to play around. If you haven't got patience, you won't get anywhere. But I promise you, if you have got patience and you apply yourself, you will turn out really nice images, even if you just shot with one exposure. There is a facility whereby you can bring one smart object in, right-click, new smart object via copy, and then play around with Adobe Camera Raw to change the exposure, and then you've created or simulated having shot 3 shots at 2 EV apart, let's say. So here we are on that one there. Now, I want to show through the sky from the dark one on top of the normal one. As I said, we might not need this 2 EV one. I need to select it, obviously, or make it visible. That's the important thing. And then I'm going to add a hide all layer mask. It's better than having a reveal all one because of the way we're working, but every scenario might be slightly different. So Alt Option key kept pressed, click on the layer mask icon. That's a hide all layer mask or layer mask, hide all. What we need to do is get the dark one's sky to show through on the normal one's layer because it's blown out on the normal one. Channels, we've got to find a mask. Notice that layer mask has appeared there. They will always appear there. And now we're looking for the trees to be as dark as possible and the sky to be as white as possible. That doesn't mean it has to be really, really white because it might look stupid, but you just have to experiment. Now, I think light one, if I start painting with white in the selection, I might ruin those trees. But it's kind of what I really want in some ways. So I'm going to risk it just for this exercise. Command or Control key kept pressed, click on it to load up the mask or select load selection, which will take you all day. So just Command or Control click on the one you want. So we now know it probably won't touch the trees. It might touch them slightly because they're grey, don't forget. But the sky will be pretty much coming through. Now, if I didn't like that particular selection or mask, what I could do is copy it or duplicate it and then run levels on it to make the sky whiter. All these things are open to you. You could even subtract masks. And we've seen the subtraction before, which is Alt or Option Command and Control to subtract. You could load up one luminosity mask and then subtract other ones. I know that sounds complicated, but once you've done it a few times, you'll understand it. But anyway, I'm working with light one, which I think is a risk. And I'll show you why. I'm going to click on the layer mask there. Now, I could use the gradient tool, whatever, but I need to work with white. So I'm going to use a brush. So D on my keyboard for default colors, white in the foreground, black in the background. B for brush. I'm on normal, opacity 10%, flow of 100%. Pressing any number between 1 and 0 will change the opacity. 0 for 100%, 1 for 10%. Flow is shift and a number. So shift and 2 will be 20% flow, and shift and 0 will be 100% flow. 0, I'm going to work with a brush I wouldn't normally work with, i.e. 100% opacity and flow. Right click to make sure the brush is soft. That is important. Make the brush larger using the right hand square bracket key, and you can see when I paint down, I'm exposing the layer below. Well, I'm showing up the dark one to the layer below. Do I like that? Considering I've done no proper editing on these 3 images, I don't think it's that bad. I have washed out the sky slightly. If I go into the sea, I might be ruining that, but I'm going to give it a risk slightly. Command and Control D. Looking at that, and I'll need to make that lifeboat station darker. So I think I'm going to use one of the midtones. The more you do this, the more you'll realise luminosity mask will be ideal. So I'm looking probably at midtone 3. So I want the sky quite black, but I want to be able to paint or bring out that lifeboat station, make it darker, because I've kind of washed it out a little bit. So Midtone 4 looks good. Command and Control, click on it. Same layer mask. Command and Control H to hide the selection. Now, the first time you do this, it'll prompt you. Do you want to hide Photoshop or hide the extras? Do not hide Photoshop, hide the extras. So anyway, try and remember, don't hide Photoshop. I've got to remember I've got the marching ants there because sometimes it can cause you problems. But anyway, I need to paint in white here. I'm going to try 100% opacity and flow and paint down. You can see I'm making it darker straight away. And I might even go around there. Command and Control Z was a bit too much around there actually. So paint around there, make it darker. And 2 for 20% flow, and I might just do a quick bit around there. And a quick bit over the sea. I'm going to take a risk on the sea a sec. I want to make it slightly darker. If you make one area too dark and the other area is too bright, it just looks stupid. So you've got to sort of mix and match slightly. So I'm using this mid-tone selection to paint around there slightly. Now, I might take a risk and think, well, what's it going to do there? It's going to darken it off. So you're only limited by your imagination in some ways and your Photoshop skills. So I'm going to leave it like that, and I'm probably just going to paint around there a little bit because I think I'm getting a bit of vignetting while I'm not going into the corners. So, yeah, I don't think it looks that bad. Now, the problem is when you're working with 3 images, you've got to be careful. The masks from one don't interfere with the masks from the other, and that's possibly going to happen here, but I'm going to risk it. I want to brighten up these trees. I almost know I need to have one of the darks luminosity masks. But what I'm going to do now is this. I'm going to Command and Control H to show you those marching ants, because if you forget to do anything, let's say you've hidden the marching ants, then you go to create a layer mask and click with the Option key pressed, you'll get that selection loaded up like so. You don't want that. Command and Control Z. So Command and Control D to deselect, and then Alt or Option key kept pressed, click on the layer mask icon. So now I know I probably need to use one of these darks ones here. I've got to be careful because if it's 100% white, let's say, you paint with white, you're going to flatten everything off. And this is the danger of luminosity masking. But once you get used to it, you'll know which ones to use to bring out the contrast. If you make a mistake, well, you know, you've got Command and Control Z, or just paint it over again by swapping the colors around. D for default colors, X to swap the colors around. So I'm on dark 4 thinking, well, maybe dark 3. No, I'm going to stay with dark 4. You can see a lot of grey there, so that would enable me to brighten it up, but not too much, because only what's white will be affected. So Command and Control, click on that layer. Layers, come to the layer mask, make sure on the layer mask. Command and Control H to lose it. I'm going to paint around there. You can see I can get away with it there because I'm not clashing with that mask too much. So I'm painting around there. You don't want to flatten it off because I don't want to take away too much from this because it'll look too flat. So Command and Control D to lose the selection. I'm going to fill it back up with black. Command backspace or Control backspace to fill it back up with black. I think I'm going to go with dark 5. Command or Control, click on it. Back to layers. Make sure in the layer mask, I'm on 20% opacity, 0 for 100% opacity. I'm on white. Command H to lose everything. And paint around here. Now that's flattening it off as well. So Command Z, 3 for 30%. I'm going to paint like that. I would never normally paint with 100% opacity and 100% flow. So do play around. So I'm going to brighten it up a bit around here. That will do. If you do too much, it'll look too obvious. So what I'm going to do now is try and brighten up this trunk. Now, as I said, the mask from one is interfering with the mask from the other. So sometimes what I would do is double click on here to bring up Adobe Camera Raw, because we haven't used it yet. And I could brighten up that trunk on the normal layer anyway with, let's say, an adjustment brush. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. But let's just try and see if we can do it using the luminosity mask. So here we go. We know it's going to be one of the darks ones or one of the mid-tones ones. So dark 5, dark 3, it's almost white, so that won't look right. Dark 4, Command and Control, click. Into the layer mask, 30% opacity, flow of 100%, 0 for 100% opacity. Control or Command H to lose the marching ants. Let's paint around there. Now that's too much. Command and Control Z. But if I drop the opacity to 20% and paint, it's not enough, so 4 for 40, paint a bit more, and then paint over that bit there. I want that water to show up. That's what I was after. You know, the eye's not fooled, or your brain's not fooled. If you make it too bright around there, it's going to say, well, that doesn't look right. So Command or Control Z. I've not done any developing of these 3 images in Adobe Camera Raw. Don't forget, I've got access to it. That's really important. So I wouldn't probably go much farther than this. I'm painting down again, probably too much. Command Control Z. I'm going to leave it at that. Honestly, I am. There's stuff to heal. There's all sorts of things going on. Now, to make that sky look a bit punchier, I might double click on this to bring up Adobe Camera Raw on the darks layer and bring the highlights down like so. And probably take the saturation down a bit and put a bit more blue on it as such, like that. And see what that looks like. So you've got great flexibility when you're using smart objects. That's looking a bit better, actually. I'm starting to like it. One more go on that dark layer. You basically can leave now because I've basically done the luminosity masking. I'm just showing you how I sort of get to where I want to get. So I might lift that up, maybe lift up the shadows to help things a little bit, around the foreground a little bit. That should do. If you go over the top with any adjustment, you're going to ruin your image. Subtlety is everything, especially when you're competing with HDR. I'm going to leave it at that. I have hardly done anything. I've not sharpened this. I've not put any clarity on. I might try a bit of clarity on the 0 EV one, help it along a bit. And on that one, I could lift up the shadows as well, or use an adjustment brush. All these things are open to me. I like that. Now, tab, that's what it looks like. Go back to Lightroom. Click on that one there. That's the HDR one. F for full screen. Let it render. Now I look at that HDR, I think it's really horrible. Now this one we've done here, hardly anything I've done to it in terms of developing it. I really like it. I've got a bit of banding in the sky. You know, I probably should have picked a different lights one. As I say, I'm not 100% happy with this, but it's a lot better than that HDR one. Now, when I do my website, I will have my actions on it, but do search for Luminosity Masks Photoshop actions and go to the actions panel and panel menu and load them in. But there's plenty of other ones out there. Now, the guru, or the gurus for me, are Jimmy McIntyre. I will have links or end cards with his channel showing. He's got something called Rare Pro, one of his panels. It's really, really good. It's not just about luminosity masks. So he's got a dog in the fight, so to speak, but this guy really knows his stuff. The other guy is Greg Benz, and I will try and have links to them. And there's a Tony Kuiper, German guy or Dutch guy, and he's got basically a website and the actions to download, etc., and panels. But Greg Benz, he doesn't do much on YouTube, but Jimmy McIntyre does. So you will learn a lot more from Jimmy McIntyre than just this one video here. I hope you got something from this, guys. I really love playing around with luminosity masks. Mainly used for image blending, but don't be limited by that. You can use them for so many other things like adjustment layers. Thanks very much.